Hi everyone. The topic of today's discussion is NetApp Virtual Storage Console. With the rapid increase in the complexity of the IT infrastructure and a paradigm shift to the virtualization, we are facing a new set of challenges. There is no more separate silos of storage, server, and network. Due to the budget limitation, IT teams are working together and trying to achieve the best benefit from each other's technology. To bridge the gap between the storage and the server virtualization, NetApp came up with a magnificent tool known as NetApp Virtual Storage Console. It provides a window to the VMware admin to their storage pool, thus giving them the capability to independently manage their storage requirement as well as reducing the turnaround time to implement any change requests. However, the storage admins still have the full control over the storage, but only delegates the required responsibilities to manage the storage assigned to the virtual infrastructure. This not only reduces the turnaround time significantly, but also reduces the human errors which could lead to the disaster since the number of cooks are reduced and the server team is solely responsible for managing their share of storage. But does that mean the server team need to learn the storage technology and its best practices? The answer is no. The software is designed in such a manner that it is going to deploy and detect errors in the storage best practices and correct them either online or offline. Let's dive into the demo so that you can understand the benefits of a virtual storage console and can leash them into your environment. For the purpose of this demo, I have set up an environment consisting of VMware cluster with two physical servers connected to a fast 2040 in the backend via NFS. Since this tool is designed for the VMware admin, thus it gets installed as a VMware vCenter plugin, where the VMware admins spend a major portion of their lives, and thus you do not need to open another console or a window and you feel like home. The Virtual Storage Console installs as an auto-configure vCenter plugin that provides end-to-end virtual machine lifecycle management for a VMware environment running on NetApp. Basically, it consists of four components: monitoring and the host configuration, provisioning and cloning, optimization and migration, backup and recovery. Let's start with the monitoring and the host configuration. Monitoring and the host configuration provides you the capability to monitor your storage and its utilization. As you can see, it will show you the storage which it is connected to, the ESX host which are being connected to this storage. Then it also gives you an overview of the storage being utilized. So this gives you the capability to monitor the usage as well as the utilization of your storage and what kind of storage is being used. That can help you to forecast your storage trends and their requirements. Moreover, this software not only configures or manages your storage, but also gives you the capability to configure your ESX host to perform optimally with the NetApp storage by configuring the required timeout value with a click of your mouse and install all the required softwares provided by the NetApp for the ESX host optimization. And once they are installed, it will let you know if the ESX host need to be rebooted. Since the complexity of an IT infrastructure has increased with the integration of the different technologies together, and so it has become more difficult to troubleshoot any problem. To ease the task of troubleshooting, we have come up with the capability to capture the different logs of not only the ESX host but to the controllers and the FC switches connected to that virtual infrastructure independently. You no more need to depend on the storage team to capture a log for a problem you're facing and send it to you. You can just go ahead and capture the required logs for the ESX host, controllers, and FC switches at the same time independently and send it to the required support staff to troubleshoot your problem and figure out what exactly is happening. So this particular tool gives you the capability to not only monitor your storage but also capture the log and reduce the time of troubleshooting which you can spend otherwise. One of the major performance bummer is the misaligned guest VMD case. To handle this situation, we give you the capability to check and correct the alignment of the guest VMDK hosted on NetApp storage controller without involving the storage admins. You can download the MBR tool and can check and realign the VMDKs and can have the optimized performance. We also give you the capability to download the tool to configure the timeout values on the guest operating system, which is same as installing the VMware tools. And then finally, the vStorage API for Array Integration, or known as VAAI plugin, which provides you with the capability to offload the task of storage vMotion to the storage controller and thus saving the ESX cycles for the virtualization task rather than the storage movement. This plugin can take care of the online storage movement when the VMs are moved or cloned from one data store to another, and the host do not have to spend its cycle to perform this task. However, hand it over to the storage controller, which can perform it much more smoothly and efficiently. Finally, we have a Discovery tab, which gives you an overview of your virtualized environment along with the details regarding your ESX host and your storage controller and other information. Let me give you a brief overview how this vCenter plugin can manage, configure, and provision storage without involving storage admins. For the first time, vCenter admins and the storage admins has to sit together and configure this particular plugin, and thereafter their dependencies from each other will be completely removed and they can implement any kind of change request without involving each other. On this particular screen, the storage admin has to provide the storage host name or the IP address along with the credentials for that particular storage controller. But does that mean that the storage admin, now the VMware admin has full access to the storage controller? The answer is no. As I mentioned earlier, the VMware admin will only have the required set of responsibilities and access to a particular set of storage or particular portion of the storage which is dedicated for the virtual infrastructure. Now I will show you how the storage admin can dedicate that particular portion of responsibilities and storage to that particular VMware admin. We go into the provisioning and cloning. The moment he will enter the credentials for that particular storage controller, it will pop up over here. We go into the resources, and now here I can make the specified dedicated changes to that particular storage controller. As you can see, I have initially made certain changes here. Make those changes, lock it down. If the VMware admin later on try to make any changes, he will not be able to do it since it will be in a lockdown mode and he will need the credentials. Once I provide the required storage credentials to it, then only I will be allowed to make the changes to this particular portion of the screen. So I provide that. These are the storage credentials. So now I have the ability to make the changes. So I have the granularity of providing what kind of interface. So in case if I had some 10 gig interface and I want to dedicate those to this particular environment, I can assign those only the required environment. So if this particular storage controller is being shared by different groups, So only the volume which is dedicated for this particular virtual infrastructure, I can put that. In the same way, if I have mixed disks, like we have aggregates with some SAS, some SATA, some 400 gigs of different quantity and different speeds, then I can just assign that particular aggregate for this particular storage environment. So basically you can see how much granularity I have, and I can dedicate only the required resources for this particular storage and for this particular VMware environment. And once I do that, make those changes and save it, now even if the VMware admin would like to make those changes later on, he will be asked for the storage credentials, which he won't have. So he will only have the required dedicated responsibilities and the resources, and he cannot mess with the storage controller. Now, let me walk you through with the rest of the options available here. We have a settings tab which give me the granularity to implement the corporate policies or the best practices of the storage. So let me walk you over there. As I mentioned, the VMware admin do not need to understand the storage best practices or need to know the best practices or the enterprise policies for the particular storage controller. The storage admin can go ahead and configure those for him, and then every time he provision any storage, those policies will be automatically implemented. So here you can provide those, he can implement those policies and then lock it down, and then every time a VMware admin is going to provision any kind of data store, those policies will be implemented. The next option we have is a connection broker. So in case if it is a VMware VDI environment, we give you an opportunity to basically integrate your connection broker. Maybe it's a VMware View or a Citrix Zen desktop environment. You can go ahead and integrate that from this particular screen itself. Then we have the DS remote replication. This basically uses the VMware's the NetApp Snap Protect technology, but mostly for the VMware environment, we rather like to recommend the VMware Snap Manager for VMware infrastructure rather than the Snap Protect. But as I mentioned, we still give you an option if you want to use it. Then we have the redeploy. Most of the times in enterprise, we have a golden image of the VMs from which all the VMs are deployed. So basically, once you deploy a particular VM using the NetApp rapid cloning utility, it basically locks down that particular template or that particular VM and lists it over there. List it over here. And now, every time I want to deploy a particular VM, I can just go ahead and use this particular template to redeploy. As you can see, this template was used to deploy these 10 VMs. Now I can just go ahead and just deploy it using the same particular template. I will walk you through the deployment process in the later part of this presentation, but as of now, I'm just telling you the options which are available. Then comes the optimization and migration. This is the screen which helped me to find out that whether I have aligned VMs into a particular data store or not. So I can basically configure a scan which can happen in the off business hours, maybe sometime in the middle of the night. It will go out and scan all the data stores and find out if there are certain misaligned VMs. If there are, it is going to list them over here. Since I have already set up a schedule, I can set up a schedule. I can include or exclude certain data stores which I don't want. I will be, all those VMs which are aligned or which are misaligned will be listed here. So as you can see, in the aligned VMs, it is showing me all the VMs which are aligned. In case if I had certain misaligned VMs, it will list me over here. Not only that, it will also give me an option that whether it can align it online, that means while the VM is on, is it possible for it to align it, or is it not possible and we have to take that particular VM down and again align it? So it is really very helpful, because I told you one of the major performance bummer or the misaligned VM decays of a particular VM, which is going to basically make your complete environment spoil out. The other option, which shows me over here, these are for those particular VMs which you might have implemented using an OVF, or which are not a standard VM, or maybe something which has been created, like as in this particular case, you can see I downloaded 2 virtual sims from the NetApp site. These are the simulators, and that's why the VMware is not able to recognize what kind of VM they are, because I selected the option of others when I created these particular VMs. So it also gives me those options that if there is something which it doesn't recognize, it will list them over here. Now comes the backup and the recovery option. As you all know, the best option to do a backup and a recovery is using the NetApp snapshot technology, because there are a lot of advantages of that, the benefits of it, as you can have online backups, it doesn't utilize a lot of space, and you can just recover from any kind of error within few minutes rather than doing it in few days. So, and as I mentioned earlier as well, the VMware admin do not need to understand how the NetApp snapshot works, but he will have the capabilities to set up his backup schedule. So he do not need to learn how to set up a backup schedule from the storage perspective. It will be a complete GUI based setup where he can go ahead and just configure this backup schedule for his particular VMs. As I mentioned earlier, the storage admin need to sit with him over here and just add that particular storage controller. He can probably create a role-based access for the VMware admin if he wants to delegate some of the responsibilities, and otherwise he can just provide that information over here, and once it is locked down, then the VMware admin can anytime go in here and create a schedule to take a backup, and it will be using the NetApp snapshot and technology to take the backup. As you can see, it not only takes a consistent backup with the VMware snapshot, but he can even initiate the SnapMirror update. So in case if there are certain VMs which are important and which need to be replicated to a DR site, he can also do that, and he do not need to learn how the SnapMirror technology works. He just need to make sure that particular data store is configured in the backend, which automatically the responsibility of the storage admin who will do that. And every time he go ahead and he can just create a schedule that, okay, this particular schedule is dedicated to do a snapshot or a backup with the SnapMirror. And it also gives you an option if there are certain independent disks to that particular data store. So if there are any separate disks which are linked up to that particular data store, if there is a VM which has a disk which is not located in that particular data store, we can even configure that. So I'll just try to create one schedule here, like the test one. Right now I'm not performing a VMware consistent snapshot. This is something like a crash consistent snapshot, but it takes a while, that's why. And now I have a granularity, like, okay, how many data stores in data store, which particular VM. So I can create a schedule of just backing up particular VMs. So as you can see, it is so much granular that I do not need to back up the complete VM data store. If a data store consists of 20 VMs and I'm only interested in say 5 of them, I can just go ahead and only back up those 5 of them. Or if I am really concerned about all of them, I can just go ahead and do a backup of the complete data store. I go ahead from here. And then if there are certain scripts which I would like to involve, and then what kind of schedule, hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, once in a or one time only. This is something which I like. It's kind of a patch update if I want to do it. So if I want to do a patch update on my golden image, or so I create a VM to create just a one-time backup of that VM, apply a patch and see if the patch works. If not, then I can always go back to my previous VM. So if I go like this, now it is going to ask me the credentials if they are different. Now it even gives me an option to that if since I create the schedule, so if anytime if there is an error, I can be notified using an SMTP server. So it will send me an email stating whether there was a problem or was it a successful. I can even set up those options here. Right now I'm going with never and just go ahead with finish. And now it is going to create a backup schedule for those particular VMs. Now, as it is creating a backup schedule, let me show you how the recovery can be done since we are on the same screen. So since I already took a backup of those VMs, so you can see, oh, right. It took a backup, this is the one which we tried running right now. So as you can see on my daily backup, which is happening on hourly basis, I can even specify the retention period, which I have specified as like 7 days. And now I can go here and just recover any VM from here. So it's just like as simple as doing a restore, and that particular VM will be restored. But the most important question is, the VMware admin do not like to spend their time on this screen. They will be mostly working on this particular screen. To make the life easy and simple, we have integrated it as a plugin so that it can be accessed from here itself. Now let's try to understand what is the most important task for a VMware admin. That is to provision data stores and to create VMs. Further, to reduce any kind of error or confusion, we have also simplified these tasks. Whenever a VMware admin would like to provision a data store, you need to provision it to an ESX host or to an ESX cluster. So if you go on to the ESX cluster and try to go ahead with the NetApp option, he will only get the option to provision a data store, which is the only related task for this particular option. Then if we go with that, as you can see, it gives me an option to select a particular controller. In this case, there is only one of them. Then I have an option to choose the protocol. Then what is the size of the data store? Let me create a 50 gig. What will be the name? And what kind of aggregate. So in this case, as you can see, it doesn't give me an option to choose aggregate 0 since it is not being allowed by the storage admin. Then it also gives me an option to go ahead and do a thin provisioning and auto grow. And then I go ahead and create this. Now before I go ahead with this option, let's try to understand what will be happening in the background. In the background, it is going to create a volume with the name test and mount that volume through NFS to these two particular ESX hosts. So let's go ahead and click next on this or apply. And as you can see, the task has started. In the meantime, I would also like to show you from the storage perspective. If you look at it, this is the storage controller on which the volume will be created. So you can see a volume has been created, and which is of a 50 gig, and this particular volume will be mounted to a storage to a ESX host. So here you can see it is mounted to through a NFS, and it is mounted to both the ESX hosts. So as you can see how simple it is and how much it has simplified the life of a VMware admin, since he does not need to bother about how the data store will be created and how it will be presented and how the NFS mount has to be done. Everything is done automatically in the background. Now, the second biggest task for a VMware admin is to provision VMs. So now I again go back, either I can choose a particular VM or I can choose a particular template. Let me just pick up a template, which is the standard way. So I go ahead with the template, or I can even pick up any particular VM and create a rapid clone. Right now, I'm going to use the NetApp rapid clone technology, which is much more efficient than the traditional VMware technology, and I will explain you the benefits. So let me first go ahead and start the cloning process, and you will find it will be much more faster and efficient to go with the rapid cloning. So now I just go ahead, I will get somewhat similar kind of a screens. Go with the, I can select a particular ESX host or a cluster, whatever is my choice. Then I go ahead, I'll try to put them into a particular folder, let them be thin provision. Uh-oh, I was too fast. And now it will give me an option. Either I can create a new data store and put all the VMs into that particular data store, or if I want to manage them through a connection broker into a VDI environment, I have that option as well. And then I have the option like how many processors do they need to have, what kind of memory they need to have, and how many clones do I need to have. So in this case, let me pick up say 5 of them. And what kind of naming convention, so whatever is your naming convention, you can provide that. Let me use test over here. Now the starting clone number, it can be either 1 or 2. So as you can see, so if I already have certain VMs already existing there with my convention, I can just start with the next option. I do not need to rename them later on. So, and then how they are going to increment, say in the case of either they all need to be odds, or if they need to be incremented by 3s. So here you have all that option listed here just to customize it with your options. Now then we have option to either turn them on, so the moment they are created you power them off, or you want to just create them and let it be there and then turn them on whenever you require it. Then we have an option that if you want to turn them on if you are creating say a lot of VMs in a VMware VDI environment, then you do not want to turn them on together, so you can stagger them their power on process. So you also have that option like how many VMs you want to power on at one time. And in case if you have a customization script, you can also apply that, so it automatically sysprep that particular VM. Then I go with next. Then it will give me an option to use a particular data store. So in this case, let me try to put it onto a new data store which we created. Then go with next. And now it will automatically go ahead and create these VM. Now if you would just try to look at it, this particular VM is basically a 40 gig VM. These VMs were also provisioned through this particular template. If you look at their hard drive space, their hard drive is of 40 gigs. And these VMs are being provisioned onto a particular data store. So and that is a test data store. And if you look at it, so this is a 50 gig data store. So if you just try to do a math, it is a 50 gig data store, and we are trying to provision 5 VMs of 40 gig hard drive each, which somewhat comes down near about like 200 gigs. So how can we provision 200 gigs onto a 50 gig data store? This magic is possible only through the NetApp rapid cloning technology because it uses the flex clone technology in the background, which is capable of providing the best storage efficiency available in the market. Now let me explain you how this happens. For this purpose, I have a presentation here. So to reveal the truth behind the magic is, as you can see, we have a data store which is presented to the ESX host, but actually this particular data store is nothing but a flex volume on the NetApp host, and this particular VM is basically on this particular on a NetApp volume. So rather than going with the traditional way where the VMware used to clone the complete hard drive of a particular template or of a master VM and then just copy all the data or all the blocks and then create a clone, in this particular case, using the flex clone technology, we just create the pointers, and those pointers start pointing to the new cloned VMs. So what is happening in the background, since in a virtual environment, mostly the operating system files and the hard drive is exactly the same. There is no more changes. So we create a VM and then we start creating pointers to these VMs. So we do not need to create an extra space to copy the exact same blocks. We just create a pointer, or we can say the snapshots of those particular VMs and of that particular VM, and then present those snapshots to the ESX host. So whenever if a user write anything to a particular VM or a cloned VM, we only require the space to save the changes which he has made to that particular VM. So if someone goes into the C drive and makes certain changes or write anything, creates a folder, so we will only require the space to create that folder onto a NetApp storage. But we do not need the space for the C drive because all the blocks which are exactly the same in this particular case, we are just shared. So this is how we use this flex clone technology and utilizes the storage efficiency of a NetApp to the ESX host. So as you can see, this basically reduces lot of overhead from the ESX as well as from the storage perspective, and you can provision quickly because in this particular case you do not need to copy all the blocks. All you have to do is just create pointers. So this process is much more faster as well. Let's go back to our ESX host and see what's the status there. So as you can see, all those 5 VMs have been created. If it would have been a VMware traditional cloning process, it would have copied all those blocks of 40 gigs of space and then provisioned them onto a new data store. So just utilizing the FlexClone technology from NetApp, you can leverage the storage efficiency to your ESX host as well. Now let's try to see what are the other best options you can get. Now since in a VMware VDI environment, one of the most common practices are we create some persistent VMs and some non-persistent VM, which are just used for temp workers, and as soon as they are gone, those VMs are destroyed. In a regular practice, if you power on a VM and if you want to destroy it, you have to power it down and then destroy it. The best practice to actually implement a VDI environment is we try to create certain different data stores for different users, and those data stores consist of either persistent VMs or non-persistent VMs. What I'm trying to say here is we have an option to go ahead and destroy a data store, and this option does not require the VMs to be powered off, which can be a problem If it is a large VDI deployment where you have hundreds of VM which you would like to delete at one time, and if they are powered on, you have to go back and power them off. And if it is like a big environment, you will find it really difficult. Whereas if you go over here, you just pick up the particular data store which you would like to destroy, make a right click and select the option destroy. Even if you see this particular VM is on, it doesn't matter. It will just go ahead and destroy that particular data store. And all those VMs will be destroyed. This option is really handy when we have a large VDI deployment. As I told you, you do not need to switch between the screens. Here we also have an option to do a backup and the recovery of a particular data store. So if I want to schedule a backup, I can go ahead and create a backup schedule from here, or schedule a backup now. Or if I want to restore a particular data store, I can go ahead and restore it from here itself. I do not need to go back. We have an option to mount it. So if I want to mount this particular data store to a ESX host or unmount it, I have that facility. Same way, I have an option for the VM. So either I can create clones, or I can reclaim the space. Like if particular VM is deleted, how much space it will be reclaimed, or I can do a backup, or I can do a restore of a particular VM. It also gives you the granularity to do a single file restore. So if I wanted to do a single file restore, I can select a particular snapshot copy from where the restore has to be done if a user has accidentally deleted any data. And so I do not need to restore a complete data store or a complete set of VMs. I can just go back to a particular VM and just restore that particular VM to a point in time when the data was available. It is same like as a timeline, and then that particular user can go ahead and copy the data from the restore, or you can copy the data for him. So all those options are available. This tool really becomes very handy when it gets integrated with the VMware, and the VMware admin can manage not only their VMware infrastructure but also can manage their storage, which is dedicated for their particular infrastructure. I hope you like this presentation. In case if you have any further questions, please feel free to contact me or email me. Thanks a lot, and thanks for watching.